Ladies and gentlemen, we love that you are joining us here and we hope that you could do us a favor. If you are liking our episodes, please share them. Tell us that you like them. Leave us a review and we will be eternally grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Wizard and the Priestess. I am your priestess and this is your wizard. Matt the Wizard, what are you doing?
Just enjoying
Welcome
life.
today. We are just past our next full moon in Libra, our sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's our full moon.
This is our moon.
Or was our fullest moon, yeah.
What does that mean
Which
for
means,
us?
I mean, as sun Libras, it doesn't necessarily mean a hell of a lot, but it kind of, I guess it brings up, so the Libra and full moon is going to bring up, everyone is going to bring up some sort of relational thing and some sort of finishing relational aspect. So it's kind of like the closure of whatever started in October last year, which was ignited through the Libra sun when the sun was shining light upon our relationships, in particular pattern of when you're like where that particular house lies within your whole natal chart. And so being the final of us, for us as sun Libras, it's more that we have we naturally are seen as peace, like trying to create peace and harmony in relationship. And so we might find that is either being called forth in this closure or had been over the last, well, it's kind of like 2 days before, 2 days after. So we're just on that on Tuesday. As you in listeners are receiving this, you are just past that experience or that vibration that was bringing us to the relational aspect. So I don't know, as Librans, we're sort of just maybe a little bit more in tune to that energy and maybe it works for us. But the big thing is that we are out of all those portals, all of those reverses, I was going to call them, but all of the retrogrades and all those things have now closed off. So it's been a big time. I have felt that. Have you felt that, Matt?
Been a week. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've had a big 6 months.
I can't really compare with that. But
No.
my own way I've had, yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of coming to that ending. So I'd say, full moons are a closure. They're a release. They're whatever we want to release. Remembering that the energy of this moon started 6 months ago, like a cycle within a cycle. So around beginning of October, when the new moon of Libra was, and then it, closed off on Sunday.
Speaking of corporal punishment, did you have something you wanted to share?
We didn't actually say that yet. Hey, you know what? Don't go there. Where's your joke?
Oh, I found out my toaster wasn't waterproof this morning.
What?
It was a shock.
Oh my God. You're an absolute
Legend.
I just can't actually, like, how do you pull them? Where are they in your brain? It's like they just come out so smooth, so easily.
It's a gift, really.
It's in one of those boxes that's separate from every other box. Because if it was in a box that connected to logic or reason or funniness,
It's in
they
the.
would not.
What do you mean?
Oh, I know. Forget about corporal punishment. On that idea of shock. So we've been kind of dabbling with this idea of intolerances recently. And yeah, I won't say any
Wait,
more
your
about
intolerance or my intolerances?
Well, I didn't have an intolerance. You're the one that had an intolerance. But I was joking about the broccoli thing that essentially seemed to be real now. But
it was funny, therefore it was real.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say was Yeah, so we've kind of been talking about the shock and what I've been kind of feeling into, especially with my experience of the last 6 months, hey? So I think like one of the big things from this sort of new avenue that I've been touching down is this idea that nothing actually fully happens unless there is a shock factor. So whilst I have, from a holistic perspective lens, have always kind of understood that, what we think and how we feel, what we think and then how that makes us feel is then going to impact our behavior and our actions. But there's also, in order for those thoughts and those feelings to become actually activated in a negative sense, we need the shock factor. So something like you're going to die, something like you're not going to, you are hurting other people, something like we're not like going to be friends anymore, something like you don't have a friendship group anymore.
You're talking about a
Something,
catalyst.
yeah, like it just anything like that, anything that brings that shock to the system has the ability or potential ability to impact the thought, energy, emotion, action kind of. That is sort of interlinked to how we actually get really ill or can get really ill. So we were chatting about this the other day when we wrote this down and we were like, we're going to talk about that. But it's almost like what ends up happening in that moment when we have those experiences is everything that was going on around us actually is part of the puzzle. So I kind of shared with you, or we were chatting about the egg situation, and I asked you to check in whether when you had like your mum had the car accident, which she passed, and you were still here. I asked, was there egg? Did you have something with egg around that time? And then what I shared for you was it doesn't necessarily mean that you ate eggs that day and you know that was the thing that now brings you back to that space. But it could have been that a few years later, maybe on the anniversary of mum's death, you felt all those feelings again. You felt that shock feeling again, and you were eating egg that day. And then that becomes like this, it's like it adds to it. It becomes a piece more of that puzzle that once was just the shock of the loss of your mum or the shock of the experience. But now, every time you relive that feeling and go back to that fight or flight edginess we were talking about last week, you actually could add more things to that puzzle.
So I did a meditation on this,
Oh, yeah.
and
What did you?
it's hard because where I primarily meditate at home, there's a construction site next door, and there's often some noises that happen, and very frequently. So it's not always the smoothest, let's call it, session. But I did go in and I did ask my soul whether there was some validity in that, and I got a yes. And I said, "Is it possible for me just to be physically intolerant to chicken eggs?" Also got a yes. Now I said, "Is it the egg itself? Is it the chicken? Because I have no problem eating chicken. Is it the egg itself, or is it the idea of the egg?" And I got a yes. I said, "Is it the idea of the chicken, like as in the concept? Like if you were to look at, I know Paul Chek
Like an
always,
ovulation.
well, Paul Chek always talks about if you see an animal or a certain tree, look up the shamanic meaning of that." So I looked up the shamanic meaning of chicken and the egg. It didn't really resonate when I was reading it. Didn't really resonate at the conscious level, but my soul told me that there was something in there that it did. It was quote unquote intolerant to. So I can't dismiss it completely. However,
You
there are
don't want to believe.
There are, I can eat things with egg in it, no problem. But if I just have the egg by itself, that's when it seems to be like a thing.
Mm.
And I went back to my, I guess, old physiology books where it says if you eat the same thing every single day without variety, which is I did for at least 10 years probably, it's likely that your immune system will develop an intolerance to it, which logically doesn't make a lot of sense. At the same time, your immune system needs variety. And the eggs that I ate for, let's say, 10 years, they were organic, biodynamic, the best eggs you could possibly get. So it wasn't what the chickens ate that gave me that response. And the response I got was low level. It was, like a bit of a croaky throat, a little bit of a blocked nose ish, but it wasn't anything you would kind of call home about. So I didn't think too much of it, but there was this one day when I went to this naturopath who did the blood tests and offered all that. I did the testing and chicken eggs came up as the highest intolerance. Now, as white-skinned people, 60% of white-skinned people are actually allergic, have reactions to gluten. It's not gluten, it's actually the gliadin in gluten, which is the sticky protein in gluten. I had a really kind of mild intolerance to that and wheat. But so I can't, according to this piece of paper, I couldn't eat wheat, but I can have wheat beer. Figure that out.
Well, that works well.
I'm not complaining.
This lady, how much you pay for her?
Well, I'm not complaining with that. I'm just saying that it's the egg thing, because you go out for breakfast to any kind of restaurant and 90% of the breakfast menu, any place you go to eat, has some kind of egg thing. But if egg is in something like a cake or a cookie or whatever, it's fine. But the egg itself, I seem to react to.
Which makes me think that it is more about what your soul shared, and it's more about that shamanic idea of the chicken egg that you don't resonate with. That is the thing. Anyway, when we come back to shock, because we've gotten past the eggs, mate. Moving on. You do your work, you figure out, you sit a little bit longer in what's going on there.
I will do my best. I will have an update next time, hopefully. I know everyone's interested.
Well, I think more than anything, it'd be quite interesting to kind of maybe just perceive our idea of what we think is the way and just think a little bit like, discover a new way is always really interesting to do. When you discovered something is like when you thought it was this way, when you thought it was a brain tumor, and then you kind of like, oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, like maybe cancer is not what people make it out to be.
Cancer is not what people think it is.
No, and maybe it's not as like scary as people think it is. Like, I don't know. I think my perspective on cancer has completely shifted recently, that I see it more as a way of the body's healing. Like I truly believe that like a tumor or a growth or a cyst is a beautiful, neat little package that the body puts everything into, rather than it being cells gone wild. And that's not to say that cells like cannot proliferate other organs and things like that, but it sort of makes more sense on a whole, like we were talking earlier about the shock of being, say, like being smacked as a kid, and how like corporal punishment was ruled out, like is illegal. A teacher cannot hit a child. Another adult cannot hit another child. But a parent shouldn't also do that. I don't think it's outlawed in Australia. It definitely is in Sweden, outlawed, and has been for the last couple of generations.
So you're talking about smacking children if they're being naughty or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So in our generation, I know I was smacked as a child and I worked out fine. I just get the occasional twitch and have therapy or whatever. But
Have an egg allergy.
I have an egg allergy. Maybe that's where it came from. But the I was going to say the people, our parents who did that, they grew up in an environment where if they went on a toilet break at school and they came back 30 seconds late, then they would get a cane across the hands, and that was considered normal. So that's the people who smacked us as kids. Now then someone decided that wasn't the right thing to do, or however that looks today.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you could argue, for me, you could argue both sides of that coin.
Yeah, potentially, but you don't have kids yet, so just wait. And honestly, I have little kids, and there is definitely times where I am not feeling like the glamorous mother that I'd hoped to be. And I can definitely look them and feel like, wow, you just hurt someone really badly, and that does not.
Yeah,
does not feel
I don't
good.
have kids. I will say this. I'm not proud to say it, but I will say it because this is a platform for sharing.
I don't think it is, Matt. Really think this through. Is this really something you want to share right now?
I'll share it as a joke because it's kind of funny.
I think they're not going to think it's a joke. You're still talking to the platform.
I'll just say,
go with your dad. Go with your joke.
I'll just say, I don't have children. I did raise a cattle dog in an apartment.
Dogs.
You don't even know. Don't even talk to me. If you haven't done that, don't even talk to me.
If you haven't seen a dog come home and wag its tail, if that's not love, I
Don't
don't
talk to
know what
me
is.
about dogs. Little Miss Trigger. Fucking hell. So I raised a cattle dog in a 2-bedroom apartment during lockdown with COVID.
Okay.
So I understand. Oh, no, I can't say it out loud. You've scared me out of it. You made me intolerant to it. All I will
Was it the shock?
say
You need the shock. Careful now.
is I think nature is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. There was something that I was going to say about the idea that the generations that have passed and how obviously as a man's testosterone lowers and a female also too lowers as they get older. Like I can only imagine the experience. I can only imagine it because it doesn't feel real to me, the experience that my father would have experienced from his father, right? Because my grandfather is the most placid, caring, beautiful man, but he is that now. And yeah, and I've asked my partner, I'm like, can you see my dad hitting us with a belt? Like, can you see that? And he's like, yeah, it's really difficult to even imagine or fathom. Like, even what you said before that your dad, smacked you.
I
Like
could see
that.
my dad doing that, sure.
Yeah, of course you can, because you physically remember that shock that may have like left a little indent in your brain and made you feel a certain way.
I can tell you kind of a funny story.
Okay, go. Tell us your
About
funny
that.
story about nature.
What's not nature? It was I think it was school holidays. I couldn't tell you how old I was. I think I was in primary school. I remember that. However old you are in primary school. So school holidays, and I did something at home. Can't remember what I did. But all I remember etched into my psyche was my stepmom saying, "You just wait till your father gets home." And I remember thinking let's say I was 10. It's like, oh, I forgot about that guy. And then So in my room that afternoon, I was sort of nervously skipping and sort of jumping around, thinking, shit. What's gonna just imagine him warming up at work, like limbering up. He's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck this little kid up. And so I thought I had a brainwave. Thought, oh, I know I'm gonna get smacked. But you know what? I'm gonna wear all of my underpants.
Uh,
All of them.
smart. Mm.
So I had, I think, 10 pairs of underpants. So I put on 10 pairs of underpants. And then by the time Dad got home, let's say it was 6 o'clock,
You
all,
were sweaty as.
all I remember thinking at the time, I remember hearing the door open and like the heart rate's at least 300 beats per minute at this point. And I hear silence. And I hear, Matthew, my room now. And I was like confident. I had 10 pairs of undies. I was like, whatever. I was like, right, come at me. Walked in there, really confident, like, righto, champ, let's do this. He's like, right, bend over. And he said, pull your pants down. Like, oh, I forgot about pull your pants down. So
This is a typical male experience. So you
So-
didn't think it.
every male listening to this can resonate with this on some level. So layer by layer, I pulled them down one by one.
Stop. Make it stop.
10 undies. I pulled down layer. I didn't take them all, like layer by layer. I decided for some reason. By the 7th pair, he was in hysterics.
Oh, thank God. Whew.
And then by the last, I think I was down to my second last, he had tears in his eyes. He's like, right, get out of here. And then I
That is
remember
so awkward.
and I didn't say this out loud, but the look I gave my stepmom as I walked back to my room was like, anyway, that's my story on.
Corporal punishment. Oh God.
So really, the
Oh,
lesson
shit.
of the day is to avoid corporal punishment. Wear 10 pairs of undies.
Oh my God. I feel hot
You're
and
welcome.
like uncomfortably sweaty about that situation. Because on so many levels that was so fucked up. And also obviously the reason you are who you are today.
A genius.
Because I think about this a little bit, especially recently when I've had some hard moments, parenting moments, and I'm like,
What would you do
Yeah,
in that
this is-
situation, out of curiosity?
what if my kid did something naughty?
Did something that in your mind, like your ego reactive thought would be, I want to, I don't want to say I want to hit you, but
I want to hurt you.
you need a smack or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they pull the 10 undie trick on you. Go.
There's no such. So this is what we talked about. Like I've shut it about before, I'm sure, but there's no. For me, it would be losing my cool in the moment. If
I thought you were going to
if-
say you just got to get them 4 pairs of undies.
no, if I don't hold that. In the moment, I might lose myself and yell, and say something that I don't mean, or move a child out of the way because they're hurting another child, and do it in a way that I shouldn't because it feels like that part really, that's the ego trip. They're like feeling really frustrated by their action, but there is nothing in me that would be within a second I've caught myself, or within maybe 10 minutes, if there's nothing more, if it's not continual, but within 10 minutes, I've caught myself enough to go that, this is my bad. This is on me. Like, this is triggering me because I'm being taught something. And I definitely had an experience like that today where I was sitting there, had such a beautiful day. So I was off guard, completely off guard, had such a nice time. And we had a nice evening and everything's perfect. And then all of a sudden something just like flips and it's like someone's hurting someone for no other reason than to get a reaction out of us. And I've been thinking about that in that moment as a child for me, I would have just been smacked and told to sit on my own and to experience my feelings on my own. And maybe that wasn't like, it obviously wasn't a good thing because there's so many little pieces of the puzzle that I'm trying to pull together to understand why I do what I do, how I think, why I think, or all the little pieces. But in that moment with that sort of thinking, what I can see is like if I were able to just let myself release in that moment, I would just smack back, you just hit back. But then in the moment after that, I would be feeling such guilt and feeling deeply shameful and all of these emotions. So it's like what I learned or what I know to be true is in the moment of a child doing something that they shouldn't, because kids they know right from wrong. They're pretty savvy. I'm pretty sure that my 3-year-old knows when she's pushing a boundary, particularly that's not okay.
According to Ra, from the age of 4, we know that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, potentially. Like, I mean, it's all nuanced in a sense, but yeah, I would say that my 3-year-old definitely knows she shouldn't hit someone else, and she definitely knows she shouldn't kick her baby sister. But sometimes when she's getting really annoyed, she might just kick her a little bit. And she knows that that wasn't the right thing to do. And I ask her and she's like, yeah, I just was feeling frustrated. So she knows. But I think that I find it really interesting to kind of I guess, toss this up in my mind or play with it a little bit and think that I can logically understand that why this frustrates me so much is probably because, well, this happened to me as a child. And then the way that my parents dealt with it was that they would smack us or they would respond with anger. And there's also an idea within me that there is something inside of me that has this anger, and that is why I'm responding to it. And the fact that I respond to it means that my child is, when they're feeling that frustration or their own inner urges or their own discomfort, it's going to come out in that way. So I can understand it from a real, more nuanced perspective now, where we actually do get that kids are not innately bad and they're not trying to do bad things. They generally want, if they do something, at least I can see with my kids, when they do something, they just want a certain type of attention that they're not getting. And what I've learned is it's a certain type of attention. So it mightn't be, I've spent the whole day enjoying my day with my kids, but it might that what they needed in that moment wasn't like a story about caterpillars and bats and how bats went to sleep and then the caterpillar woke up. Like, that's not the story they want. They actually just want a hug. They want to be heard or felt in a way that you just can't. I mean, personally, I just can't catch it. So it'll be a hit to the other kid or it'll be a smack to me or whatever it might be. And in that moment, if I'm shocked into it, it's going to make me react even more because, or not even more, but more like, hang on a second, what's going on? If I've been in a shit mood all day, well, then it's completely on me that I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing as a parent. But anyway, going full circle here, I wonder how this is what I sort of toy with is like, I know that people say now that like the 20-year-olds or I don't know what comes after Gen X or Gen Z, or like, where do we go? Gen Alpha or Gen Beta? Like, I don't know what happens. Do we start again? But either way, whatever the generation is, like the teenagers now, they aren't necessarily committed. They're not hard workers. They're not willing to do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. And there's so many layers to this, but I can imagine that, or I would hope that from a biological standpoint, we might be doing better in that we're not creating all this shock to the system. Because when your dad would say, come to this room, the energy that you would have felt every time you knew you were about to get smacked, or what would have happened to our parents, when the teacher says, you're late, and then they get a hit to the hand or whatever. Like the shock to that system, that constant feeling of edginess, like there has to be a point where we realize that that's not good, but then we also do better. We don't become cushy and become incapable of actually living
I think
an
it's a
empowered life.
double-edged sword, really. I mean, people think of shock as it's correlated with bad or trauma or something like that. However, that can also be a really useful catalyst to correct something in life as well. It's all perspective, and it's all based on belief and what you believe slash think right or wrong is. And to the degree that we do something and feel guilt, then what's that guilt based on? Usually guilt is based on someone else's story of what right or wrong is. If we were brought up thinking that doing that thing over there is wrong, but we do it as an adult, then inevitably within us we're going to feel guilt. But then whose story are you living? Are you living yours, or are you living someone else's? And I don't think we are anyone to say what right or wrong is, because that varies greatly on culture to culture, family to family, country to country, religion to religion, etc. If
Can I
we're
just
raised,
catch you on that?
hey,
Can I just ask, but what about the human aspect, the biological aspect, the part where we are a man and a woman, the part that we are human beings that goes deeper than culture, that goes deeper than those layers that you're talking about?
oh,
What about from that perspective?
what about it?
Well, there's sort of no nuance there. It just is.
Well, it just is,
Every
but
human has nose and eyes and mouth. Every human has hands like every female human has breasts of some sort. Every male human has a penis and a ball sack. And I'm not trying to get into the whole, I'm not trying to belittle anything. Like, I'm not talking about gender and things like that. I'm just talking about from a biological perspective. We go deeper than that, what you're talking about, right? I mean, you're acting like someone, like a man doesn't have a ball sack or something. I don't know. I've never met a man without one. But what I was trying to say is all those nuanced ideas are just layers on top of the biology of the human being. And so what I think is that if we delve down this pathway where all of a sudden we're actually understanding how corporal punishment is actually horrific, how we actually, when we really truly understand our children and we see them in a light, or cattle dogs, I don't know, depending on how you want to see it, but if you see them in a light where they're not necessarily our things to be trained into being a certain way, they are these like whole beings as they are. And we kind of missing that a little bit, I think. Like they
are whole beings as they are. They are, however, born into this space-time reality, not knowing that. And it's our job, as in the caregiver's job, to, I don't want to say mold, but to guide the infant into ultimately holism. But the infant, depending what age you want to talk about, already knows that. But at the same time, there's going to come a time where the neurology of the infant needs to go out on their own to discover who they are relative to the pack they were born into.
Mm.
And sometimes that requires some rebellion to see, if you think of life as canoeing along a river, following the current, but from time to time you hit one of the banks. One of those banks we would call corporal punishment, which creates a shock to the system. Now, that can be viewed as a really bad thing, as in, shouldn't hit your children, shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. At the same time, you could also argue that, well, that's a lesson the kid's going to learn because they've learned now that the fire is hot. Don't touch the fire anymore.
Yeah, but it's very different. Like, it's very different when a kid is like, don't touch the fire because it's hot, or look at your blinky face, like, shut the fuck up. I see you. I can see right through that. But if a child then has like an emotional outburst because they've been, for whatever reason, needs have not been met, and they are sharing for you that my needs are not met here. And I guess when I can feel myself really, really angry in a moment with one of my kids, I can generally get to a point where I might be using tightened teeth, but I usually can find myself saying something like, I know you are feeling really hurt right now, or I know you are feeling really hard feelings right now. I see that in the way that you're acting, but I can't let you do that because I need to protect our family, or I need to keep everyone safe. This is a safe place for everyone, not just for you. So it's like I can grit myself together, hold my hands, and I don't need corporal punishment, or I don't believe that. I believe, what I truly think is that when we move towards a better way of living, when we keep moving towards a way to live as we are designed, to live with the earth, to live with the seasons, to understand all of those things, to forget about, like, to allow the abundance of money and energy in that sense to just fill us fully, to find the thing in our life, the vocation in our life that actually lights us up, lights our soul on fire. When every human has the opportunity to do that, to find the thing that actually lights their soul on fire, because we have taken away things like punishments, in a sense that, like, the fire is hot punishment is a perfect biological functioning situation. You cannot touch the fire because the fire is hot. But I can tell you that there is so much that I wish I learnt from my mum, or had guidance on from a woman's perspective. So many women literally start bleeding and know nothing about it until that time. It's like we have so many things like that go on in our lives. Like, how many women fall pregnant? Oh, I know I want to have a baby. They get that internal feeling, inkling, they want to have a baby. But then the shock that comes once they're pregnant of the way that they have to do that in accordance to the system that has no biological, like, function. It's just a way of being. It's just sort of, it just really shakes sort of changes the way you view the world, because no one is being prepared. So I believe that we have missed a lot of bits and pieces.
We have. It also depends on the theme of the shock that you're talking about as well. And coming back to whether you're female or male, that largely dependent on the environment in which you were raised. Because you could take a boy or a girl raised in the city that say they've watched documentaries that snakes are poisonous and they're dangerous and blah, blah, blah. Take kids from the country, boy or a girl, pick one, and they've been raised to, they haven't seen the documentaries, but they've been out in the bush and they've been educated by their parents or their grandparents or whoever, or maybe they've just gone out by themselves and they know this snake is kind of not dangerous, this snake is dangerous. So you have two completely different responses. When the city kids see a snake, they shit their pants. when a country kid sees a snake, these okay, well that's that kind of snake. It'll do this. So there's two different reactions. So it's largely environmental, and that environment is also largely dependent upon the belief. So that just goes back showing how potentially dangerous a belief system can be.
Yeah, because it's all layered on top of it, though, right?
Well, yeah, because our beliefs really navigate our life.
Mm.
So a lot of
But
people will be in a state of being where, and I see this clinically, that their belief keeps them in a constant state of panic or worry or anxiety or whatever it is. And I always ask, well, where did that come from? Is that yours? Or did you pick that up from somewhere, from someone? Because we're not born anxious. We're not born depressed. We're not born, well, can't say we're not born shocked, because if you could remember your own, if you could remember your own birth, it would likely be a shocking experience. But all that aside, from a conscious perspective, we learn all that from somewhere. And it's usually our primary caregivers, which is in most cases our parents, and we inherit their beliefs. So I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, let me take it from there. That's exactly, I guess, the point, in that we can sit and think that, you know, the youth of today are becoming softer, more cushy, more incapable of like doing things that don't light them on fire. Or we could think of them as people that are actually maybe healed a lot of, because the newer child is being brought up without the fear, without the excess shock, without the, having to grit their teeth all the time and not say the thing that they wanted to say. Like, there's so many layers to this that, we have. So, what are we seeing now? Like the huge rates in cancer rising, all these people having all of these illnesses. Is that based upon the fact that we have like actually internalized a lot of our parents' beliefs it's gotten to the point where it's actually burst, that their sicknesses is like so much in their body, the body can't actually do anything with it anymore. And they haven't psychologically, like how often do we say, oh yeah, well, that generation, they're not willing to look there. It's too hard for them. It's too hard for them to go in and actually like try and excavate a little bit of the layers of trauma that have been like swept under the rug for all of them, because when I'll ask my mum, I'm like, she doesn't believe that she smacked us, although I can definitely recommend a wooden spoon being like chased after us with a wooden spoon. And so obviously there was a threat and there was a fear. There was a fear-based parenting, or threat-based parenting. And I said, would you do that the same? And she's like, oh, no, I probably wouldn't. Like, I don't feel like that would be such a good idea. And it's like, yeah, we are fairly functioning people, but there's so much to that where it's not, then you're not fully functioning. And like people, hopefully, I'm hopeful that my daughters will grow up knowing all about the seasons. They'll know all about their own seasons, their own cycles within cycles. I'm hoping that their whole cohort of women that are like within them learn those things too. And I'm hopeful that the men that they are connected to also have their men or their fathers and their connections to actually teach them about the cycles of manhood, like like those layers that have been mixed.
I hope that for them as well. And if we're looking at looking outside today, there's also a chance that's not going to happen.
Well, it's going to happen for my people. Maybe not yours.
I have no doubt. God help them. But the general population out there has come from a place where Like if they're our age, they were smacked as a kid, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, that's completely subjective. And
I don't know that it is though, Matt.
whether it's right or wrong,
Like, well, okay, whether it's right or wrong, maybe, but whether it was a good or a bad thing, like, let's look at it to our parents and consider,
but then we can look
like,
at our parents and judge them for doing it or not doing it. Yet we could also see from the broader perspective that's all they knew, because
oh, of
maybe
course,
they
they
were
were doing,
belted as they when they were kids.
of course they
So
were.
when they
Can
were
you
raising us,
imagine?
then that's all they knew what to do. Now we can say
Totally.
in hindsight that was a terrible thing to do. You should be more awakened and blah blah blah. But
No,
in reality, if I brought this argument to my dad, he'd just tell me to
yeah,
piss off.
he would though. No, I reckon your dad would say, I probably wouldn't, if I were to do a do-over, I probably wouldn't smack you again.
I would strongly disagree,
All right, ask
especially
him this
after the
week.
underpants story.
Ask him this week.
I will.
Because I don't believe that I don't believe that they would do it the same way. I don't. I
Well, they
think that
wouldn't
in the
do it the
moment,
same way, like the whole thing. But I mean, the whole discipline. Are we talking about shock in general? Or are we talking about smacking children? It's a. They can
well,
be
I'm
really
talking about the shock that comes from someone, a caregiver, that is essentially conditioning their love to the way that you act and behave. That's what I'm talking about. The shock in that your parent loves you and you rely solely on them as a little human. You rely on them, and your whole life revolves around their love for you because that means that you are safe. And in them then turning that on, turning that love off, and essentially telling you, no, 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 I will only love you if you behave and act a certain way because I'm showing you now, like, how much that must have burdened every child. Can you imagine little Matt? Literally, how painful this man who is now your one shining light, the one person that has your back, the one person in this life that keeps you safe, turns around and goes, Matt, get in here. Like, I'm going to belt you. And now I am no longer safe because this person who was my safety and my full love and my full trust is in hurts me.
undies. Let me put something to you. Soul contracts.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad, right or wrong. This is there.
I just believe that the soul contracts are shifting. I believe that the contracts
So
that are coming through now are a
you
lot milder.
sure. You and I chose our parents.
Yes.
We knew what people they were when choosing.
We chose to come in at a particular time
Now, let's
in the
say
awakening.
we were
We had to
souls.
take what we could get.
Let's say we were souls on a certain mission to accomplish, or I don't
The
like the word
wizard and the
achieve.
priestess. That is why we are here.
We were here to do something in this world. Whether that thing is good or bad, your call. My personal belief is that we're all, or most of us at least, are born with some sort of positive intention. Whether we get confused along the way and go off in another direction, that's debatable. Now, what if you were born to learn forgiveness in this lifetime, and you were born into a really abusive family? Let's just say as a child, you were, when I say child, from say birth till 18, let's just say. Let's say you were physically abused, mentally abused, all the things, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
What better environment could you wish for to learn forgiveness? We chose our parents to be brought up in a certain environments to activate something within us.
Mm.
So from that perspective, from the higher perspective, take out good, bad, right, wrong, all that earthly stuff. Where does that then sit from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I accept that, but I find it very difficult to, you know, I think, yeah, of course, it's the thing.
Hashtag the lesson.
Well, this is it, right? And I think that this is where I come from, is that I truly believe that I live and breathe the path I walk and talk. And I find that, you know, what I want for me, which I follow from which is totally intuitive led. What I choose to do feels like I feel confident in what I choose to do and how I feel and think about these things. Like, did I tell you about how I did the Enneagram the other day? I did this Enneagram is like another framework of like a personality framework. Essentially asks you all these 10 questions, 20 different styles or ways, and then it gives you a number of 1 to 9, essentially your personality type. And my personality type is the challenger. And it's like, oh, don't know how, but it's just that I challenge the stuff. Yeah, it's just shocking, isn't it? But it's just because I think that's like, and in all these soul frameworks, essentially gives me this reminder that there's challenges, and I'm willing to push things in a way that people aren't actually willing to. I'm willing to look and to question and to challenge things in ways that people aren't willing to. And I think that so personally, I can see the power of, as humans, I truly believe that whilst we come for certain lessons and yes, we choose our parents, I think as the challenger, I could have the potential to be a change maker and ensure that the souls that are that are choosing to incarnate, I mean, obviously with all the listens that we're getting, but we have the potential to actually impact people that then go, hang on a minute, before I become a parent, I actually should do some of my own self work and understand what I feel about my own self-worth and how much I feel I am worthy and how much I feel I am safe and how much I feel I am loved. And in doing that, the people, the souls that are going to choose to incarnate in this moment in time are going to have it's just not better, but it's going to have a different vibration for the humans, the future, because it does feel like we have an opportunity to actually break a lot of the patterns that are based upon. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not going to still be evil in the world, but I do really believe that humans on a base biological level are here to be joyful. Whether they want to learn the hard lessons, that's another layer. But I do really think that humans themselves as animals, if you compare us to tigers and lions and apes or whatever, we're here to be like just easy, flowy humans.
I think we're here to learn.
Can you be an angry learner?
Absolutely. You could argue that you learn more when you're angry if you're conscious of it, because anger isn't a natural state of being. For some people, it is, you could say, their norm. However, is it natural? Is it sustainable? Probably not.
I think that's what I'm getting to. My point is that a natural state of being for a human being is to be and to flow and to have joy. And that doesn't mean that you don't feel everything, the whole spectrum of emotion. But I think it's kind of coming out of that human earthly plane and getting out a little bit, like elevating out a little bit to be able to look back and then receive the gift of whatever experience you're part of.
But then how many people would reach that?
But that's what I'm sort of saying, that the more that people can hear and understand that the power that is within you to actually learn your lessons and then allow them to be, because you think that people come to Earth to be angry their whole life. Do you believe that your dad is living his soul path? Not saying he's angry his whole life, but do you believe that he's here living his soul path? Like, because I feel like personally, I feel like I can see in my mum glimpses and glimmers of her ability to actually, I'm like, oh, you're so close, and then you're not.
Yeah,
I
that'd be
don't know if that's
similar.
what her soul path is.
No, but I think dad's content with himself, whether he's reached his potential.
That's my point.
That's
I
not
feel like
not for me to say. That's not my thing to judge. I can
as the challenger,
challenge away.
I challenge that.
So my dad thinks he's the healthiest human in the world. Now you've
No, he
met Dad.
doesn't.
You've met
He doesn't
Dad.
think he's the healthiest human in the world.
Now, looking at my dad with my clinical brain or my clinical eyes, and I've treated him several times. I remember doing one technique where I was, what was I doing? I was cupping C2, his neck, doing some cranial traction with the intention of stretching the dura. And I felt a release where just to give you an idea of what that feels like, picture holding someone's neck where they're laying down, head in hand, and you pull towards yourself. You feel everything relax, and then the head just draws like really subtly towards you. That's a release. And then he did a big, which is a release. A sigh means release. And then he said the words, so what's he supposed to do? And it was like, my ego was like, fuck, man, you've got no idea what I'm doing for you right now. But then the other part of me was like, well, he's not here for that. He's not here to get that. He has absolutely no idea what I do for a living. And I've even asked him, what do you think I do for a living? And the answers were just comical. Absolutely no idea. So is that his potential? I would argue from that perspective, no. But if you were in his being, he's retired, he goes fishing, every day, all the things. He's living his life. If I was to give him a clinical analysis, I could have a list of a log. But that's his thing. And he's happy doing his thing. So is that his potential? Who am I to judge that?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because I feel like
Sorry, can I just hear that again? Maybe get it in writing.
Shut up. You're right all the time. I just need a little bit of time to chew on it and let it sink. Because I have a bit of a problem with the idea that humans can just accept that they're gonna just plod along and, not evolve.
Maybe you're right. I need to turn the tables and smack him.
Yeah, bend over. Dad, get in the bedroom. See how many under. This is what I just experienced before when you told that story, and every listener that like literally was like, "Oh, hang on, what's going on? Whoa, hang on, whoa, slow it down, no, just don't go there." And then you put on your Superman undies, and it all changed. But yeah, I think it's just
Wolverine, but whatever.
okay. Yeah, I think it's just an interesting thing. It feels like I believe that the less shock we have from a biological functioning, this is as we are as human beings. If we reduce the shock level, we will reduce the human suffering level. And by reducing the human suffering level, we will live a more joyful, easeful human life. And I truly believe that when humans live in joy and ease, the vibration and the frequency lifts and everything feels better. Like living up in the countryside, it seems like people on a more like daily level, I will meet someone with joy. I will feel their joy, and that will bring goodness into myself and into my soul, and I feel good about that.
I've
It
got
is more
a
common.
I've got a curveball to throw to you. I've got a
Let me keep going with my
curveball to
before
the
you curveball
challenger.
come. Okay. All right, hang on. Caught it.
Okay. There are shocks in life. There are that are unavoidable. We cannot see them coming. No matter how wonderful parents we had and perfect childhood, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be something in life that kicks our ass. Yes, no.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what a
Okay.
shock is, right?
So what's your tip / approach to either
Lessen the blow.
someone who's, you know, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, that life has just completely turned upside down. And it really obviously depends on their conditioning, will determine how they approach that.
Mm.
At some point, people will get shocked from a surprise, from a life will say, fuck you at some point on some level. I've had several, as have you. So, what do people do in that place?
I don't know. You have to hold on and trust, I think, is the basic of anything, right? You just have to find inner peace.
I think the first thing you can do is,
Did you ask me a question or are you just telling
well,
me?
that answer was, yeah. I was expecting more from the challenger, but I think the first thing you could do is ground yourself,
Inner peace.
ask yourself some questions. Can I breathe right now first? Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Do I have access to water? Yes. Do I have access to food? Yes. Do I have shelter? Yes. Is there love in my life? Most likely, probably. So, first and foremost, how big of a threat is it? And once you've determined said threat, then you can, from that point of clarity, say, okay, well, it's not life threatening. So I have the resources to find the answer. And I can find the space and the time to allow the answer to come. Because the quieter I am, the quicker the answer will come. And to the degree I stew on it and ask the what ifs, which can be helpful, but it can also be very catalytic to what we're trying to go for in that moment. We can say, it's not life threatening. Tomorrow the sun will rise, the tides will go in and out, and the sounds of nature will continue. So what would I do in this situation? And if you're really stuck on, well, what would I do in that situation? I often tell people, or I would ask a patient, who was your childhood hero? Was it Batman, Superman, whoever? It's okay, what would they do in this situation? What's their mindset? Where are they going for this particular event? And it might not solve the problem, but it can help them shift their consciousness in from a panic state or a shock state into a becoming a witness into their own reality. And from there, they can actually make a functional decision or shift their mindset at least to view it differently. Challenger, go.
She's still finding inner peace, mate.
Well, there's your answer.
I think.
Boom.
Well, I agree with what bring people back into their body, and then remember that, you don't want to overemphasize it. So if whatever's going on feels really shocking and scary, find a way to find the less fear, which is what you just described. You're not, like, realistically your heart's still beating, realistically you're still breathing, you're not suffocating, realistically there is food on the table, there is a space, and whenever we look to that place, there's always more room for, like, deep acceptance, and exactly where we are is exactly where we're meant to be if we see it from that soul contract perspective. But I do really find personally in recent times, I find that really hard things become somewhat acceptable, or really hard things don't seem to be as scary or as hard. But then I know personally that there's been, lots of little challenges that have happened along the way that have made me feel like I can't be vulnerable or I can't be soft. So I've hardened and I've become the challenger that I am because of those experiences in the past. And some would say, well, that set me up for really hard experiences that have happened more recently, or like over time, harder things that have happened that I've been able to move through quite easily on a whole, and I wouldn't say it has been easy, but it has been okay as well. And it's not, I always look to see the silver lining, because I've seen what challenge, and I can see how that shock and experience of those shocking experiences that I've had previously, well, it doesn't get better the more you sit in or hold on to what wasn't serving.
But also know that the universe wouldn't throw you something that you couldn't handle.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one recently about you only receive the suffering that you can handle. And I think there's a bit, it's a powerful thing to imagine. But I also hope anyone that is between the ages of 20 and 35 considering having children do take a bit of a moment to, like, look to themselves and see what's going on and see what challenges are there and see where they're getting triggered. Because I tell you what, you will be triggered. You will be triggered.
What you should do first, really, if we're being serious, is if you like the episode, leave us a 5-star rating and you will be blessed.
And leave us a voice note. We're really excited. We actually got a voice note, but I fully forgot about it. So leave us another one, and that'll be fun. If you want to get on. Thanks for coming. See you next time.
You've been listening to The Wizard and the Priestess. Thanks for stopping by. Stay connected and be open.